All right, Dylan's group. Who can share something that they notice or wonder? Just tell me if it's notice or wonder. Just a little louder. You noticed what? They both have a curve. Good. So both graphs have a curve. Does anybody else in that group want to share? Natalie, Ez?
The second graph does not work because the length it doesn't sit down.
Good. Second graph is not a function, right? Because of the vertical line test. Okay. Excellent noticings on the graphs. I would like to have people contribute anything that they can about the domain and ranges now. Okay, over here. Ella, Angelina, what do you guys have to share?
I said the domain and range both have positive and negative numbers.
So the domain and range both have positive and negative numbers?
I mean, for just the domain.
Oh, the domain here? So this one? The first domain has positive and negatives. What about the second one?
That's positive.
All positives? Okay. So the first domain has positive and negative numbers. Anything else? Positive and negative numbers. Okay. Jaden and Enrique, remember, I want you to share something about the domains and ranges. It could be something that you notice or wonder. Go ahead.
Domain is adding pattern.
So Enrique and Jaden notice that there's an adding pattern in this domain, right? That is going up 1 each time. Okay. So I'm going to add that to this one. First domain has positive and negative numbers and an adding pattern. Jaden, you had something interesting on there too about infinities, right? What did you write?
How do you get negative infinity?
How do you get negative infinity? Like in this range, right? Okay. So that's something you wonder. How do you get negative infinity? Good question. All right, Luis, you're on your own over there. What'd you get? Say it again.
I have the same thing.
You have the same as him. Why? How do you get a negative infinity? It's a good thing to wonder. Tanisha and Crystal, something you notice or wonder about the domain and range? One more time. One has infinity and one doesn't. That's good. So did you guys see that? The first one doesn't have any infinities on it, but the second one does. So first graph, no infinity. Second graph has infinity. Nice. All right, Brandon, Sam, what's something that you notice or wonder? The same thing about the infinities? Yeah, that was a really interesting one. All right, Nyla, Yesenia?
The domain is the x-axis points,
Mm-hmm.
and then the range is the y.
Domain is x, axis, points. Range is y. Raise your hand if you remember hearing that before. Domain is x points and range is y. Anybody else hear that before? Jaden heard that, Nyla heard that. Anyone else? Enrique and Ella? Anyone else? And maybe Ez? You're thinking maybe I heard that somewhere before. Okay, so that one's going to be an important point going forward. When we find the domain, we're basically listing all the x points. Good morning. And when we find the range, we're finding all the y points. So what about the graph do you think it is that makes the second graph have infinities? Raise your hand if you have an idea. I'll take right ideas and wrong ideas. I'll take them both. I see 2 hands. Why does the second graph have infinities? 3 hands. Oh, good teamwork over there. All right, Natalie, what are you thinking?
The two little symbols with the lines means that it doesn't finish there.
Okay, so these are arrows, right?
Arrows.
Yeah. And she said it means it doesn't finish there, right? It doesn't stop there. It keeps going. What number is all the way on the right on the number line? Infinity, right? If you go all the way on the right on the number line, you're going to go towards infinity. Can you ever get to infinity? No. No matter how far you get, you got to keep going to get there. That's kind of an interesting idea. But you're heading towards infinity. So that's where this one comes from. All right. And then Jaden asked an interesting question, and Luis had the same question. Where's that negative infinity come from? Right? Because we're going all the way to the right. That's positive infinity. Raise your hand if you have an idea about where that negative infinity comes from. I see one hand. I see two hands. Enrique, what's your thought?
All the way to the back.
All the way to the left. So you are correct that all the way to the left would be a negative infinity, right? But do we have an arrow going to the left? Okay, so you gave me some good information. If it was going to the left, it would be negative infinity. I see one hand here and I saw another hand there. Tanisha, you still want to share your idea about negative infinity? No? Nyla?
Because it's like on the negative y.
On the negative y. So for the range here, right, we're looking at the y values. I can see this one keeps going right, but do you guys see how it's also going down? It keeps going down forever and ever and ever. In the y direction here, if you keep going down forever and ever and ever, you're going to be approaching the negative infinity. So you guys did an excellent job looking at that and trying to digest that. We're going to turn to the back, and we're going to see if we can do some matching. Okay. Notice you have an answer bank of domains and ranges. Each graph, we're going to list domains and ranges. Do you notice how some of them have these fancy brackets and have lots of numbers in them? And then some of them have parentheses and square brackets and they only have 2 numbers.
Yes.
Which ones do you think are going to have the fancy brackets and lots of numbers? I'm not asking domain and range. I'm looking at the graphs. What kind of graph is going to have the fancy brackets and lots of numbers?
T grinds.
The one with the points. Who is that? Nice, Jaden. Okay. The one with the points is gonna list all the x's. But if you have a continuous graph like this, it has an infinite number of points on it, and so it's impossible to list all the points. So in that case, we just list the smallest and the largest, okay? So something like this, that would be the smallest, and that would be the largest. But when you have the fancy brackets are listing all the x's. So this would be smallest x, largest x. This lists all x's. List all x's. How about the range? The ranges aren't the x's, they're the what? The y's. All right, so in that case, this one would be the smallest y. And this would be the largest y. Well, my handwriting is terrible. Let me see if I can, there, freeze it. Okay. All right, it's a bit of a matching activity. Of course, we're going to use a pencil in case you make a mistake because you're just learning this, so I expect you to make mistakes. I want you to work together with your partners and see if you can make some sense of this. I'll take lots of questions and then we'll go over it and make sure you got it, okay? Raise your hand if you would like to give an answer. It doesn't have to go in order. You can give me 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you can give me domain or range. All your phones should be away, of course. All right, Nyla, which one do you want to do? Number 1, domain or range? Okay, go ahead.
1, 3, 5.
All right, so Nyla put 1, 3, and 5. Did you put the fancy brackets on it? Okay, did anybody else put 1, 3, 5 for the domain? Okay, so For domain, remember that you're looking at the x values and range is the y values. So when you look at the points, you go down to the x-axis, 1, 3, 5. Does anybody have a question about why that's the domain? All right, does somebody else want to raise their hand and share the range for that one? Enrique, what you got?
2, 6, 10.
Okay, let's check that out. So 2 is a y, 6 is a y, and 10 is a y. You go from the bottom to the top. So 2, 6, 10 with the fancy brackets looks good. And that was y values. All right, so we could do 2 next, or we could do any problem next. Raise your hand if there's one that you feel at least like 75% confident about. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can get another hand. So far I've had 2 good participants. I'm looking for another. Ez, go ahead. Which one do you want to do?
2,
Number 2, domain or range?
domain,
Go for it.
2, 6, 10.
2, 6, 10. Who agrees that the domain for number 2 is 2, 6, and 10? Anybody else get that? Yeah? Okay, good. Domain is 2, 6, and 10. Enrique, do you want to give us the range for that one?
1, 3, 5.
Okay, so looking at the y values, 1, 3, and 5. That makes sense. It did work out that way, but that's kind of a coincidence. All right, so we did the ones that are points where you list all the numbers, but now we're at the intervals because remember, when there's an interval, you cannot list all the numbers. You have to just give us the smallest and the largest. Raise your hand if you would like to try the domain or the range for number 3. I see 1 participant. I'm looking for a few more. You guys are feeling a little uncomfortable, I can see. Enrique is doing a great job, but there are more students in this class, so I know you guys can also help us out. Who wants to give it a try? Jaden, go ahead.
What?
Do you want to do the domain or the range for number 3, Jaden?
The domain is negative infinity.
Negative infinity and infinity. Do you guys see how that graph goes all the way to the left, negative infinity? And it goes all the way to the right, positive infinity. So the x's are negative infinity to positive infinity. Over here, the x's go to negative infinity because of the arrow. Remember, Natalie said that arrow means it doesn't stop, right? It keeps going. And then on the right side, positive infinity. All right, that was very brave. I think that I have at least 1 volunteer for the next one. Who wants to try the range? I see 2 volunteers. Okay, Nyla, let's give it a try.
Negative 4, infinity.
What do you think of that, Enrique? Negative 4 comma infinity. Did you get the same or different? You got the same? Anybody else get negative 4 infinity? Thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways, I don't know. Okay. Good. Negative 4 comma infinity. Does anybody know why we put a square bracket on that negative 4?
It looks cool.
It does look cool. Absolutely. What else?
It explains better.
It does explain something better. What it explains better is the fact that we're including that point negative 4. Okay? We can't include infinity because we can never get there. We can head towards infinity, but we're never going to get there. All right. Next one. Domain. Does this domain also go all the way to the left and the right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Does it go all the way left and right? Shayla, Yesenia, does it go all the way left and right for this domain? Yes? Okay. It does. So even though I can definitely see it's going up, it's also going slowly, slowly, slowly left and right. And it doesn't matter how slowly it goes left and right. Eventually it's going to go towards negative infinity on the left and positive infinity on the right. Can I write the positive infinity first? Am I allowed to do that? No. You always have to write the smallest thing first and then the biggest thing, okay? So if you're ever confused and you're thinking to yourself, I think maybe it's going to be switched this time. Nope. Always smallest and then biggest. All right. The y's on this one are tricky. The range is tricky because when I look at the bottom of my graph, I see this point right here. And what number is right next to that point? 7. What number do I see right there? I see the -4, but why does my range not start at -4?
Because it's on the 0.
It starts at 0 because 0 is the x or the y?
Y.
The y. Right? So when I'm looking at this point here where I start, you got to ignore the -4 because that's an x number. And you want to look at the y number, which is 0. So if you look down here, can you see how the y's are -2, -1? They're going to be 0 right here. So your range starts at 0 and goes to infinity. That was definitely tricky. Hello. All right, Tanasia, I believe you have this one. I think I saw you working on that one. What did you get for the domain for number 5? So Tanasia suggests that the domain is -infinity, 4, thumbs up, thumbs down. What did you get? Did you get the same or different? Okay, I see some thumbs. I see that's like a number 3. That's different. Oh, 3. I'm sorry. My bad. So she said -infinity, 3. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, good. It is -infinity to 3. Sorry about that. And then the range, Enrique. Enrique says -infinity, infinity. Can anybody else see that in the picture? Look at this one over here. See how this one is going all the way down? It's going left, but it's also going down. This one's going left also, but this one's going up. And so it is a -infinity, infinity. All right, let's stop our video here.